Okay, so this is the second chapter. This is the first lecture of the second chapter. This is the chapter on culture. For this chapter, I'm going to be referring specifically to the OpenStax textbook. That's the digital free online textbook. The chapter on culture. So in the previous lecture, in the previous chapter, I was talking about the perspective, the way that sociologists look at the world. In this chapter, I'm going to be talking more specifically about what we look at, and that's we look at the way people organize their lives, the things that they do when they organize their lives, the things that they surround them with, and this is a way of describing what we mean by culture. Culture is one of these very big, very broad concepts, but at the same time, it's kind of invisible to us. Maybe you've seen the meme of the fish that's in the water, and the fish doesn't notice the water because he's completely surrounded by it, and it permeate and it's everything. And that's sort of how our culture is. We often don't notice our culture until we are confronted with another one, or until we have some discomforting experience, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So culture is everything that has meaning to us. We'll talk about the two elements. It is the things, our material culture, our houses, our hair, our clothes, our books, our music, but it's also the non-things. It's the ideas, the values, the way that we organize our life. So here's sort of the way your chapter is broken up. It talks about culture as our values and our beliefs. When we use the word values, we're talking about the things that we believe, that the what we think is good, bad, beautiful and ugly, desirable, undesirable. So it is about opinion and perspective. Beliefs are the ideas that we believe to be true. The ideas and these things get tied up together, right? So our beliefs are theoretically grounded in our ideas. Our norms and our rules. Norms is a fancy word for the rules about how we're supposed to live, how we're supposed to be. We'll talk about the different kinds of norms. There's actually a hierarchy. Language and symbols. So language is the system of symbols and the systems of sounds that we string together and we share across generation and across groups that enable us to share and to explain our ideals, what we value, as well as the rules about how we interact. There's a really important sociological idea that suggests actually that the way that we think is limited by the language. There's this notion that if our culture doesn't have a word for it, we can't identify it. We may or may not experience it, but we certainly can't identify a sensation if we don't have a word for it. Our arts and our artifacts. So this moves us into the material culture, the things, right? The symbols. I see in my little picture here, I have a picture behind me of Saru. And if you are of that particular subculture, you may know who Saru is, but my guess is that a lot of you don't, right? So it's an image he's a Star Trek character, but he's an image, he's art, right? A reflection of a particular group, and that symbol has meaning to me, that artistic symbol. Our artifacts are things, that our houses, our clothes, our books, our collective identities and memories. Wow, this is an interesting idea. So the notion that the way I think about myself as an American or as a middle-aged woman in Kansas, I share that identity with a lot of other people. And by simply calling myself a middle-aged woman in Salina, Kansas, I have a collective identity with other women who have that similar experience. And consequently, we also have shared memories. So I could talk to another woman my age from Salina or Manhattan, and we could maybe discuss or reflect on our experiences in 2020. We have those shared memories. And then finally, when we talk about culture and society, culture is, oh man, I meant to look this up exactly the way the textbook defines the difference between culture and society. Let me look it up real fast. So, culture, shared beliefs, And then what does it say? People who live in a definable. So society is the word that we give to the people that have a shared culture. My other textbooks don't actually go into explaining those two different things. Okay, so shifting gears here, we're going to talk more about these two elements. I believe this is a quiz question. What are the elements of culture? So if you think about elements like your chemistry class, you had, oh, well, no, it's not a very good example. But in to sort of take that metaphor, in this case, we're going to talk about culture as being like the gas and the solid, right? So non-material culture, this is going to be our gas. This is our ideas about the way the world is, our attitudes, our opinions, our beliefs. These are considered intangibles. So these are the things that we cannot touch. Typically, I would argue, or I would suggest that when we have cultural conflict with others, it's over the intangibles. It's about the way people organize their lives. I should have norms on here. Matter of fact, I think I'll add that right now. Norms being literally the ways that we act, right? So when we have a cultural conflict with somebody, it's that maybe they stay up too late, or maybe they don't let their women drive cars, or it's about the way they worship, for instance, right? So I would propose that the bulk of cultural conflict is about the non-material culture. It's probably not about the houses people live in, about the cars people drive, about the music they listen to, or the clothes. That's what we talk about material culture. Your material culture is the stuff, right? Another way to sort of think about the difference is, and I kind of have a picture of a museum, is if you go to museums or antique stores, that is material culture, right? That's the stuff. That's the clothes, the books, the music, the art. And then when you read the little placards about what this stuff is and it explains it all, that is explaining the non-material culture. So here is a pot, right? Here is a pot or a painting or a dress. But what this pot, painting, or dress is about, that's explained in the non-material culture. That's explained in the ideas, the attitudes, the way people use it. We're not fighting over the pots and the plants and the dresses. That's not what wars are about. Wars are about how people organize their lives, their ideas, their attitudes, their behaviors. Wars are about the non-material, the tangibles. So another important cultural concept is this idea of cultural universals. And what I find interesting about I'm shifting textbooks. That's why some chapters I'll be referring to different textbooks. But in this particular textbook, I think it has this really great explanation of what cultural universals are. And these are ways that people organize their lives that are consistent across all known human groups. And these cultural universals seem to be tied to food production or getting access to food, clothing, and shelter, right? So, for instance, family, right? All cultural human groups have some sort of family form. Well, that's about shelter, or that's about survival, right? That's about how we collect food, how we provide shelter, how we provide clothing. Music. Now, I don't know where that one falls into this example. Language and personal names and humor. Humor is even considered a cultural universal. So all human groups that researchers know about have some way in which they organize their life, in which they take care of each other, and they provide food, shelter, and clothes. There's all human groups seem to have some sort of musical form, have some language, which would also be essential to food, shelter, and clothing, names, personal names, how we organize their names, and some sort of sense of humor. Okay, so I'm going to stop this lecture right here, and I'll pick up in lecture 2. I will talk about experiencing different cultures, another couple really important concepts there.